I have an evil sister. Her name is the VLAN trunking protocol, but she's not. By the time we're done here, we will use VTP to propagate VLANs to switches, then disable it. do you get the idea that Jeremy must have 7 kids? I do. I'm like, I don't know if I trust that elephant anyway. She's not. So what I want to do in this nugget is to use VTP to assemble and distribute the VLANs in Arizona across the whole network. Now, again, remember, VTP is not a trunking protocol, but it is, they should have called it VRP, the VLAN replication protocol. Maybe that was taken or something like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the network so you can see the commands of VTP so that we can have VTP on. We'll see what it does, and then we'll turn it off so that it won't cause us any risk in the future. So here's how it happens. I'm going to bring up the Arizona switch. Let's see which one I'm plugged into. I'm in AZ switch 3. Let me move over to switch number 1 just because I want to make sure that we kind of do it in order so we don't get lost. That's one of the things I find so often. There we go. I'm plugged in. Is I'll be doing network configurations, and this is in the real world, and I'm like, oh, and then here, and then here. If I don't use a system, if I'm not methodical, I get lost. I always forget something. There's too much not to forget. So I'm going to start from switch number 1. I'm plugged in. Get into privilege mode, enable. There we go. I'm going to type in show VTP status because I want you to see the default state of a switch. Now notice it's running VTP version 1, which is, there's different versions, and this is how old it is. Version 2 supports token ring. So obviously it's not a really big deal. But we'll change it to version 2 nonetheless. It is in the server operating mode. That means that this switch can create VLANs, it can delete VLANs, and it can replicate those to others. The 2 alternate modes, so server is the default, so everything's a server, and that's why that configuration revision, this is that database revision number that I was talking about in the previous video. So they're all at 0 right now. They're all servers, so the way they figure out who has the latest database, since any of them can make changes, is by that rev number. But you also can use client. And if you do, that means that the switch that is configured as a client no longer can create or delete VLANs. It just receives updates from other switches. But you are your own worst enemy in that case, because what you'll do is you'll forget which one's the server. You got like 50 switches, and you'll go in. You're like, oh, I just need to add a VLAN. And it's like, oh, sorry, you can't add a VLAN here. You're a client. And you're like, no, I'm not. And you change it over to kind of defeat the whole system, right? So it's your own discipline and your own documentation that is going to make sure that they stay clients if you want to use that as a feature. The one that we will probably do in most organizations is transparent. And transparent is where it's saying I can pass VTP updates. I'll let them like flow through me, but I'm not going to listen to them. I'm not going to do anything with them. I'm effectively disabling VTP is what that mode is, right? So here's what we'll do. I'm gonna go in and clear that little chicken scratch. Go into global configuration mode. And I'm gonna type in VTP. And let's say a question mark, see what our options are. First thing I'm going to do is change to VTP version 2. Just so we got the latest version running. These are old switches, so they're using version 1 out of the box. And then I'm going to type in VTP. Let's go VTP domain. So I'm going to say the VTP domain name is, and this is where we choose that name for all the switches to be. I used Bob in the previous video where I said, here, here's an example of it. But let's call it Arizona. And I'll type in all capitals. And by the way, capitals are a big deal. The VTP domain name is case sensitive. So if you have uppercase Arizona and then lowercase Arizona, they will be in different domain names. So you can see the domain name is changed from null to Arizona. It's saying, oh, we've got to change. If I want to, I can put a password in there. I can protect the domain by adding another layer of security, the password, which again, in the previous video, I talked about how that rogue lab switch comes in. That's where the problem comes in, is usually you'll have the password on that switch. So it's good to have a password. It adds a layer of security. security, but it's not foolproof by any means. So we'll leave that off for the time being. So at this point, I'm going to go back. I'm going to do a show. Let me take off caps lock. VTP status. Hit the enter key. And look at this. We're now server. We're now Arizona. And we are now up to VTP configuration revision 1. So let's add the VLANs. I'll do... let me do it. Hang on. I'm gonna move my console cable over to switch number 2 because I just want to check something. Move it down here, then jump back over here to the configuration. Hit the enter key a couple times. Get logged in. I'm gonna go on switch 2 and type in show VTP status. Oh, what? Did you configure this, Jeremy, previously? How did that happen? Well, the reason that happened, remember I told you when a switch is fresh out of the box or has no configuration, the VTP domain name, I don't know if you caught it. Look at this. When we went back right here, it says the VTP domain name, right there, has been changed from null, which was essentially blank. Remember when we typed this command before, it said the VTP domain name is essentially blank. There's nothing there. So we changed it from null to Arizona. Now, other switches that are also named Arizona will join that domain name. But if another switch is blank, like it's null, it will take whatever the first VTP advertisement says. So if I say, I'm domain Arizona, it's be like, well, it's better than null. I'll be Arizona too, right? So you essentially have one time to configure the VTP domain name in a new network, and that propagates to all of them. So that propagation has begun. Now look at this. I'm on switch number 2, right? So I'm going to do a show VLAN, and there's I've got the default VLAN, and then the ones that are there because of the RFC specification. That's about it. I'm going to go into global configuration mode, and then type in VLAN 10. Now notice I'm on switch 2. This is the second switch, but remember all the switches are servers by default, right? So I'm going to say VLAN 10, and we'll say name server. Or wait, no, I called it static. Name static. There we go. I'm going to do a show VLAN. Verify that I now have VLAN 10 static showing up, right? I'm going to do a show VTP status because now look at what just happened. I'm at configuration revision 2. And wait a sec. Hang on. Come over here with me. I'm going to jump over and move my console cable up to switch number 1 if I can reach it. I can't wait to get IP addresses and remote management configured on this thing to stop switching this cable around. Hit the enter key. I'm back on switch number 1. Show VTP status. Look at that. It updated automatically. It's 2. Show VLAN. And again, I'm on switch 1. And look at what happened. Static. I now have that VLAN showing up. So, okay, so what if I wanted to change this to client mode? So I'm going to go into global config. I'll do VTP mode. You see that middle option right there? Hit the question mark, and there's the 3 that I described to you just a moment ago. I'm going to say this is now a client. You are a client. So I'm back. I'll do a show VTP status. It says, yep, I'm still the same config, but I'm operating as a client. So if I go in, okay, I want to create VLAN 20. Enter. It's like, sorry, you're a client. You can't do that here. Oh, okay. Well, I should go back and move that console cable, but I'm not going to. I'm going to type in VTP mode. This is why I'm demonstrating being lazy. It's very easy for me to demonstrate that. So I then can hit the up arrow, VLAN 20, name VoIP, enter, and now I'll do a show VTP status. I haven't exited out yet. Hang on, there we go. Show VTP status. Configuration Rev 3. And isn't that interesting? The way the Cisco iOS works, it doesn't actually create VLANs until you exit out of the VLAN configuration mode. That's different. That's unique. Other modes are not that way. So it's now up to Config Rev 3. I'll do a show VLAN. I see that here, and we'll do it. We'll just verify it one more time, right? I'm going to move my console cable. Let's go all the way up here to the access switch, right? We'll go to switch number 3. We haven't even looked at that one yet. Back to the prompt, hit the enter key, do show VTP status. This guy's in Arizona, even though I didn't configure it, just kind of joined. It's in configuration Rev 3. I'll do a show VLAN, and notice we've got static and voice over IP that's there as well. Good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the other two VLANs. VLAN 30, name client. VLAN 40, name BYOD or public. Let's do show VTP status. You can see that I'm now up to config rev 5, so that I guarantee you that's replicating. Show VLAN. I see those VLANs that are there. Now let's disable VTP. Global config mode, VTP mode, transparent. Now as soon as I do that, I'm going to do a show VTP status. Look at this. What happened to the config rev? Back to 0, right? Show VLAN. VLANs are all still there. It's just saying I'm no longer participating in this whole game that you were playing of VTP. So the best thing that you can do is now go to the other two switches and also disable VTP on them as well. So I'm going to move my console cable down right there. I'm plugged into switch number 1. VTP mode. Oh, and let's just verify. Do show VTP status. These guys stayed as servers. It's not like it replicates the mode. So I'm going to do VTP mode transparent. So we've disabled it there as well. Move it down one more time to switch number 2. And click. Enter key a couple times. Global config, VTP mode transparent. Good. Show VTP status. It's zeroed out, transparent, and all the VLANs exist. So, kind of handy, right? If you're rolling out a network, to be able to use VTP to send all those VLANs, so you don't have to go switch by switch by switch, but then disable it. But I'll tell you the reality. Usually, in the real world, you just disable it out of the box. It's one of the, and by the way, on brand new switches that Cisco is creating, it is disabled on the box. If you want to use it, you can use it by turning it on, but it's in transparent mode by default because they recognize the risks of VTP far outweigh the reward. So we've now used VTP to propagate VLANs to all the switches in Arizona. We've now disabled it by flipping it to transparent mode, and we're ready to move forward. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.